And so we open today's bidding for these luxurious trousers for only €12,000. Do I hear 12,000 euros? Gentleman at the back with the stupid face, thank you. Do I hear 13? 12 and a half? No? Perfect. Highest bid. Do I hear any lower bids? 11 at the back there. 10? 9 and a half? Thank you, gentleman at the front with the fabulous face. Sold to the gentleman at the back, €12,000 for this delightful pair of luxurious trousers. Apologies to everybody who made lower bids. You will of course be given complimentary, free of charge, 2 pairs of trousers as form of compensation. Oh, furnace! Kindly provided to us by Hobby World and designed by Ivan Lashin. Furnace, usually pronounced using the Borat voice, is a sharp game of tight mechanical decisions that plays 2 to 4 humans. And it's a game that wastes no more of your table space than it will your time. Time is money, and I won't waste yours, so without further ado, it's currently 4:05, and that 450 English pounds. Let's motor. Now in Furnace you're going to play across 4 rounds, tracked by moving this fabulously simple cardboard square down this jagged piece of cardboard, a mechanical wonder which frankly delights children and me. You're going to be bidding for auctions on these industrial sites. You're going to be building up a tableau of structures that you own, and then you're going to be running them in order to create a bunch of resources which will then hopefully be translated into cash money, with the richest player at the end of the game being crowned the best for today. Each round, a selection of different properties will be offered up for the auction, and you'll take it in turns to place one of your discs on any of the currently available properties. Each player has 4 discs, each of which is more powerful than the last, with 1 being just a little bit of investment and 4 being worth a whopping 4. Once each player has put down all 4 of their discs across these different properties, we're going to see how these auctions panned out, going from left to right, and the effects, the kind of knock-on effects of each of these auctions being activated one at a time, going from left to right, in a way that doesn't really make that much sense, but is quite a lot of fun. Board games! Who knew? Firstly though, let's be a big pain in the bum and be a stickler for rules. There are rules about how you place these discs on the cards. First of all, you cannot have 2 of the same colour discs being placed on any one card. It doesn't matter how much you want to win that delicious sunset. Oh, it's so beautiful. Doesn't matter. If you've put down a 2 on it, you're done, red player. You can't put down anything else on that for the rest of this round. The second rule, quite simple. If there is a number already on a card, you cannot place the same number again. If I'm the black player and I want to bid on this as well, I can't also bid 2. I'd have to use one of my 3 other discs. But apart from that, all bets are on. Listen, if we had an auction and I said, look, I'm going to put the maximum amount on this property, then you would think that that's that done. That auction, no one else is going to bid on that. I've won it, definitely won that. Everyone go home. No, not in the world of Furnace. This is now prime to be exploited for compensation, because at any point you can underbid or overbid, obviously, it is an auction, with anything you want, which means as the red player I could come in here and go, whoop, yes, you've won this with 4, but with 2. As a loser, I am going to get to take home some compensation. And often compensation is just better than the actual thing. Maybe not tangibly in a very black and white sense, but in terms of the situation, in terms of what you need on a round-to-round basis, you often really don't want to be winning auctions. For example, right here we have a card that if won will create a factory that can convert barrels of oil into 4 coins. Fabulous if you've got lots of oil, but if you haven't got any oil, you might really want the tasty compensation, which allows you to convert a bar of steel, a little blue piece, into a barrel of oil as many times as matches the number on the disc that you put down that didn't win. So for example, the black player puts a 4 down, they've won the property. But if I, as the white player, whack down a 3, then hey, I didn't get that property. But maybe I didn't want it. And I get to then 3 times, up to 3 times, turn 1 little bar of steel into a barrel of oil. That could be huge for me. It could be huge. And so frankly, the wonderfully horrible thing about Furnace is the fact that each round with these 4 discs, because you can't put the same colour disc on a card twice, you have to bid on 4 separate properties, but you almost definitely don't want to win all of those auctions. So where you put it involves some quite careful decisions, and even then, sometimes other players are going to be mean. And while some of these properties are going to just create resources out of thin air, a lot of the time these structures that you bid on are going to be converters, taking one resource, turning it into something else. And it means if you do not have enough of the raw resources coming in through your chain, then your action round is just completely useless. And there's only 4 rounds in the game, which means if you have 1 round where nothing gets made, that seems bad. That seems quite bad. And at this point we reach a fork in the road where I have to ask you, how mean do you like your industrial capitalist board games to be? Would you prefer little baby bastard mode, or are you up for super bastard mode puzzle to turbo? In which case, I'm on this team. I don't know why. It's not good for me. I'm not good at these games, but I just prefer it to be meaner. What's wrong with me? Please send in your answers on a stamped address envelope. In the base game of Furnace, the one that it recommends you play, every time you get one of these cards, it's going to be added into your tableau. And then when you actually activate one of these buildings, when you go through and run your engine and turn this resource into this, and this into this, and this into this, you can do that in any order you want. You can activate this card, then this card, then this card, etc. However, there is also an alternate version in which whenever you get one of these new buildings, you have to slot it somewhere into your machine, and you will always run these buildings from left to right. And every time you get a new one, you can chuck it in the middle if you want, but then everything is stuck together with glue. And if you've made some bad decisions, then well done. You've made some really bad decisions. But I have to say, I've framed this quite poorly for the sake of personal ease. I wouldn't even really describe these 2 variants as being like an easy mode and a hard mode at all. If anything, they just do different things and cause different problems for different people. So it's just a case of really, quite honestly, literally choosing your poison. The left to right variant is absolutely a crueler beast, but I think I'd more often invite it into my home just because of how effectively it displaces the inevitable late game heads down crunch of people trying to work out the optimal way of doing things. It doesn't matter, you've made your choices, zoop, and now the game is over. Meanwhile, the softer kinda, still, you know, it's still an economic crunchy thing with money and resources and oil, don't get me wrong, but when you have the capacity to activate things in any order you choose, it's more forgiving in the early stages of the game. You're less likely to have a situation where you've knocked the wheels off of your own horse and cart and the horses have run away, and it turns out your cart is made of lolly sticks. I don't know where this analogy is going. I don't know where the horses went, but at the same time, you are going to have that slowdown at the end of the game. You're going to have that last round where people are really looking to optimize something that they probably can. Whereas if you've just got a bunch of lolly sticks stuck together with a horse in there somewhere, then you've got no control at this point. You just have to live with it. I'm sorry for all of the harm I've done to these fictional horses. Having this option, though, I think is really neat, not just because it offers players a harder version of the game, which it kind of does, but it just softens off edges whilst creating harder edges elsewhere. And I think the thing is that's cool about board games and humans in general is we are different. And whilst I can't really tolerate a sludgy endgame, at the same time other people have no problem with that, but can't tolerate a game where they sit there spending an hour going, I've lost, I'm screwed, which is probably about 50% of the games I play. So yeah, keen on that, like it. But if you're still on the fence about this complexity, it's worth knowing about upgrade tokens too. Yeah, there's a resource which allows you to basically create upgrade tokens and then activate them using your HQ building, and doing so will allow you to flip a card from its kind of okay side to its way better side. You can see the sort of little grayed out bit at the bottom of these cards that represents what this building will be able to do when it reaches full power. And again, little touch, the fact that the illustrations sort of amp up as well. A little bit of smog, Full power, Smog. I'm going to fill your house with coal. And so hopefully you've now got a sense of how many other layers of complexity you'd personally prefer to add on top of this design. And I should really point out that whilst we've got large quantities of these cubes and bricks and delicious golden tubs of oil sitting on the edge of the board, resources in this game are frequently very scarce or just unbelievably bountiful. There's no in between. You've either got nothing and you really just need something, or you are just drowning in oil and you're just desperately trying to turn it into money as quickly as you can. And that's the other part. And the fact that you really don't want to have a lot of resources at the end of the game. You want to convert it as much of that as you possibly can into hard cash money. And now I'm going to have to fade to some other B-roll while I clear up the mess I've made on this table. And I'm just going to mention again that the game only lasts for 4 rounds. First round, you've got basically nothing. And the last round, ideally, you want to have close to nothing, which means you've got like this incredibly tight window in which to start up, activate, and create a successful business and then wrap it up all as quickly as possible, which is honestly is golden. It means so many of these games will stretch out across whole afternoons and involve dramatically larger quantities of bits and bobs. And honestly, don't get me wrong, I love those games. But this packs an outrageous quantity of chunkiness and difficult, specific small decisions into a dramatically simple set of components. Winning the right auctions to get what you need to make your chain work on a kind of a long-term basis is crucial, but also losing the right auctions in the right way is crucial to make sure that you can even activate your chain in the first place. If you don't have the raw resources you need to start off the system, then your supply chain can end up looking like a British supermarket 3 weeks from now. But bad news, the other players probably are mean, which means they know what you need. They can look at what you've got and go, okay, well look, if Matt doesn't get any steel, he can't really do anything. And so he's put down, let's just say I put down a little tiddly little thing on there thinking, you know what, I'll put down my 1 vote on this card. And it means that like I'm only going to get 1 steel in compensation, but I'm definitely not going to win that card, right? Well, I might. I flipping might. Because if other people know what I need, then they can just be mean. And so what looks like a relatively simple design on the surface is embedded with quite a rich vein of depth just underneath it. Yes, you've only got 3 different types of resources, but the fact that there's going to be different demands for these resources in different games, and the fact that all of these factories do strange conversions, 4 of these for 2 of these, 2 of these for 1 of these and 1 of these and 1 of these, means that if you're not careful, you can quite easily create an engine that is just sort of cycling things around in an ineffectual way. It's like the Victorian industrialist equivalent of having a job that's mainly emails. Now, obviously, it's not going to be something that's going to replace your truly gigantic, big economic machines. But this is a game that could quite easily sneak into your shelf and displace a far larger box. I mean, look at this chap. It's blatantly a killer. Blatantly. He's killed. He'll kill a board game. No sweat. And finally, if you feel like there's not quite enough chunkiness and chewiness for your taste, then I haven't even mentioned the capitalist cards. 5 different characters that basically allow you to have a special power that fundamentally breaks the game. Maybe you can place tokens that match numbers that already exist on cards. Maybe you get an additional disc. You get a brand new number 2 that you can drop on something at your will. This is a family show. And while these capitalist cards do indeed contain the visages and bodies of human beings, this is a game that mostly just sidesteps a lot of the complexities of dealing with a legacy of historical figures by mostly not really being about people. A lot of games in this style and genre do tend to overtly celebrate historical figures from the industrial era, and that's kind of tricky in the fact that these people had less than squeaky clean slates. They're only remembered by history because, gosh, they spent a lot of money specifically so they would be remembered. And the process of them doing so meant that they kind of edited their own legacy along the way. It's equivalent of standing over the shoulders of history being written and saying, hey, maybe let's just cut that last paragraph out. And look, we can't get away from this stuff, right? The astronomically rich are always going to be spending the money that they extract from labour to whitewash their own legacy for future generations. Right? That's just the way it is. It's hard to get away from that. But it's also hard to get away from the fact that games that let you turn coal into steel into money are really very satisfying and fun. And so I think I just really appreciate Furnace for not bogging itself down with some of that historical stickiness and allowing us to focus on the only true titans of industry, which of course were big factories what were made out of bricks. And on that note, from something that could have been so flat and mundane, there is so much colour and life in these illustrations, injecting an unexpected dose of rainbow into the brown and beige cinematic universe. And so I wholeheartedly recommend Furnace. It's an easy recommendation. It's so solid. I wish the box was smaller, but frankly at this point I should just have that tattooed onto my forehead. If this was an auction, I would bid 4 onto Furnace, and then I would hope that it wouldn't turn out that actually if I bid less I would have got 2 copies of Furnace for free. If, however, you demand something chunkier but with a similar theme, I'd highly recommend City of the Big Shoulders, a game of pigs, pork and stock manipulation. Arkwright is a similarly grand and fiddly beast. And of course there is also the Arkwright card game, which converts a big game into a small box in a similar way to this, although that is still a big game, don't be fooled. And if you're looking for small boxes which are packed densely full of crunch, I'd really recommend the Red Cathedral by De Vere. I mean, if I had to pick between the two, I'd probably choose the Red Cathedral by De Vere. And that doesn't mean it's a better game, all right? It's just that I think this is a puzzle that my brain is slightly better suited to, and I cannot resist the allure of shiny gems. Also, smaller box, better density. Look at that, it doesn't make a noise when you shake it, because there's no air. If I was an astronaut trapped in this, I'd be in serious trouble. Yeah, Furnace is great. It doesn't have gems. There's shiny. Oh. What have we learned today? Well, I'm effectively a magpie, it turns out. And so now, for the next 10 seconds, please enjoy some of the videos and links appearing on screen whilst I spend about 8 to 10 seconds pretending to be a magpie. Ah! 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 I'm a sick magpie, very unwell. I really thought this would be better. I really thought this would be better.